Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Witness and I'm your host, Katrina Hussain. One might be surprised if looking at some of the headlines that are splashing across newspapers these days. At a time when the country is beset from problems from all directions, there seem to be indications that the government is considering again raising the prices of utilities, including gas and electricity, and potentially petrol as well. Coming on the heels of Ramzan, and after that, of course, is Eid, this will be indeed an unpleasant gift from the government to the people if this actually goes ahead and happens. Indications are that the government is coming up with some unique plans to deal with the country's economic crisis. One suggestion floated has been to make electricity so expensive that people use it less, and that should remove the energy crisis. That has to be the most defeatist logic I have heard in a very long time. Add to that the continuing problems in Karachi, where if the death toll remains in the single digits, we consider it an improvement and a good day. Isn't that sad? Add to that the continuing violence. We all remember the horrific bombing in Jamrud on Friday, about 6 days ago, in which more than 48 people died. Now, these issues continue to remind us that we are at war. Again, the monsoon season reminds us that we have barely recovered from last year's floods and are heading into some kind of minor level of flooding again this year. Already has started in areas of Sindh, including Badin. And in the midst of all this, it seems that the government is, well, at sea. Perhaps that's the most polite phrase I can use, because at this point it seems that the government seems to have no direction, no plan except to react, and that too rather late, to events sweeping across the country. Well, that's going to be our topic for today. Allow me to introduce my guest here in the studio. My first guest in Islamabad is, of course, Senator Tariq Azim with the PML, and he has been following events very closely with us in this program as well. Joining me from Lahore is going to be Sardar Asif Ahmed Ali. He's an MNA from the ruling Pakistan People's Party. And my third guest is going to be Khurram Dasgir Khan. He's an MNA and the Deputy Information Secretary of the Pakistan Muslim League N. And Mr. Dasgir Khan will be joining us shortly. But Sardar Asif, I will begin the program with you. The current state in the country, depressing, makes one wonder exactly what policies the government is charting, and the sad fact really remains is that we are seeing no substantial policy making.
I don't quite agree with that, because I think a lot of preparation is going on. Everybody is expecting another flood this year, and in fact before the real floods have come, very big rainfalls have come in Sindh, in particular in Badin area, and that has caused a local flooding. But the real flood is yet to come, and I think NDMA and other organizations and the Sindh and the Punjab provinces have their contingency plans are I think ready. I'm not in the government, but I'm absolutely certain that they already have the contingency plans. A little bit of that I've seen.
Okay, so that covers it for the floods. But what about the fact that this government is continuously increasing the prices of utilities, which are crucial input costs to production as well? Utility prices, including gas, electricity and petrol, are being jacked up virtually every alternate month. Where does the government think this inflation is going to take them?
Well, you see, there are two aspects to this. One is, of course, the international energy prices. The other is the budgetary, the resource gap. And somehow or the other, we have to raise the resources to clear the circular debt, so that the power generation can start, and power can be supplied. Uninterrupted power can be supplied from the IPPs and others. And I think this is the biggest worry for the government, is what to do with the circular debt, which increases by about 23 billion a month. And I'll be very candid with you, Katrina. I think this is not being handled properly. I think the IMF has been after us for a long time. World Bank, IMF, Asian Development Bank, that all these public corporations need very serious restructuring and, if necessary, privatization. I don't think the effort has been put in to do this. And if we do not do this, then the burden will come on the taxpayer in some form or the other. And since there's a huge budgetary resource gap, this seems to be the only way to raise the resources to remove the circular debt, and therefore to have electricity.
Sardar Asif,
even at a price
it is
which
almost
higher.
a breath of fresh air to hear Pakistan People's Party MNA speaking so frankly, saying that the circular debt is not being handled properly. The public sector organizations need to be restructured or privatized. These are the issues that we have been all talking about for months. But Senator Tariq, here's the real question, isn't it? The government seems to not be able up to the task at this point. Their own people are saying that, and not just Sardar Asif, numerous other PPP MNAs say, yes, we know it's not going well. What is the opposition doing about all this?
Opposition has done well to provide them with all the economic managers. I mean, we had at one time we had Ishaq Dar Sahib, and now we've got Sheikh Sahib. Both belong to the opposition at one time or another. But I think Sardar Asif Sahib is being truthful when he says that they have not handled it properly. If they could have handled it properly, 3.5 years is a long enough time to correct the situation. We had 3 or 4 financial managers as finance ministers. We had resignations of 2 or 3 governors of the state bank
governors.
So it is, I mean, we are actually, quite frankly, as in economy, as if we turn economic terms, it is a rudderless ship. We are dealing matters on ad hoc basis, day-to-day basis. We have got strong pressure, I agree with Sardar Sahib, from IMF, from World Bank. And we have let it happen because we have just, been able to all the time not generate any of our own funds, and all the time been heading towards them to ask for more money.
Let me ask you a simple question. We have had several finance ministers and state bank governors resign, as you mentioned, including Shaukat Tareen and others. Why are they resigning?
Well, obviously, you see, the policies of the government are not, they are such, like I said, they are ad hoc basis policies. They every day they deal with matters as they come along. There is no long-term policies. If they do have any long-term policies, they are unable to carry them out. They totally.
Why are they unable?
Well, this is just, unfortunately, they are not capable of doing it. This is the sad truth. I mean, they don't want to hear that. But in order, even if the willingness is there, you have to have the capacity and the capability of carrying out those decisions.
Well, a lot of it isn't rocket science, is it? I mean, restructuring 5 public sector organizations, is that so hard?
I mean, they did not, first of all, admit that they have agreed with the IMF that they will totally eradicate all subsidies. They wrote to the IMF on 20th of November 2008. The letter was written by Shaukat Tareen, co-signed by Shamshad Begum as governor. They said, we will do this, we'll do that, and all that. I mean, all that letter. I raised that matter in the Senate, and they denied it. They said no such letter was written. Later on, when the letter appeared on the IMF website itself, then they admitted, yes, we have written that letter. And they have why don't you be open with the public that this is what we have said, the prices are going to be such, that maybe people will find it very hard to handle those prices. The oil prices, I'm sorry to rebut what has just been said. The oil prices worldwide have gone down from as high as $147. They've gone down with negative growth in many countries, as we have envisaged. Even the growth in many other countries, whether it's US economy and Germany economy, is such that they fear that the consumption of oil is going to be lower, and therefore the prices of oil have come down. Now, instead of prices going up, we should be seeing those prices going down.
And that's not happening. Now, this is the tricky part, Sardar Sahib. Figures released by the government indicate that the government has been borrowing 4 billion rupees a day. That's about 120 billion rupees a month. That is a record that has been set by any government in Pakistan in its history of government borrowing, and this is just from the central bank. What exactly is your government spending this money on? I mean, 120 billion rupees a month is not small change. That should have wiped out the circular debt in one go.
Well, Katrina, you see, as I said, I'm not in the government, but what I can do is I can make an intelligent guess what's happening. And I think what's happening is that after the National Finance Award, a huge amount of resources have been poured into the provinces. And the federal government First of all, when the 18th Amendment bill was passed, it was passed with unanimity, but I don't think it was passed with much thought. I don't think enough consideration went into it. I don't think enough national debate went into it in the media or in the public. And so it seems we were in a rush to legislate the 18th Amendment bill without realizing its full impact on the federal revenue and what to do with the whole federal government, how to run the federal government, how to have the resources for development and for the current account expenditure. I think the Parliament has, I will not say erred, but I think it has acted in haste. It has caused a lot of disruption. I am one of those who is not against autonomy, but autonomy at the cost of weakening the federal government to a point where it can't pay its bills. I think the whole Parliament has to answer for this. And the federal government has just dried all its resources. Every year you got to disburse to the provinces. And what do you have left to run the rest of the country and have economic development as well?
Sardar Sahab, I'm absolutely stunned at your words, because the passage of the 18th Amendment is being touted as the biggest feather in the cap of the Pakistan People's Party.
Well, we all agreed, every one of us agrees, even today I agree that maximum provincial autonomy would be very good for Pakistan. But where was the need to legislate it in one go? There should have been a period of transition of 2 to 3 years, so that all the negative impacts of the decentralization and passing everything on to the provinces, devolution, would not leave the federal government dry of resources. Now this is what's happened. The federal government seems to be drying up of resources, and the provinces are flooded with money, in spite of the fact that Punjab, which used to be once a surplus province, has spent irresponsibly and has gone deficit. Sindh, on the other hand, is a huge surplus. So this should have been phased over 2 to 3 years. But the implementation committee was in too much of a hurry to go and make a political statement before the people of Pakistan. Here it is, we've already passed. Well, they could have passed, but the transition period should have been at least 3 years.
Senator, I'm actually, I totally agree with Sardar Asif, but I didn't expect to hear this. Sardar Sahab, with all due respect,
Katrina,
your honesty is...
I am pleasantly surprised, and my hat's off to Sardar Sahib, because I fully agree with him. I'm one of those people who criticized it at that time. Change in constitution, especially bringing in 18th Amendment, it affects every single citizen of this 180 million people. Nobody was consulted. Every political party brought in their own agenda. Somebody wanted Pakhtunkhwa put in, somebody wanted third term, everybody had their own agendas, and they brought in. It was never debated. I fully agree with Sardar Sahib. It should have been debated in the media. People should have said their pieces.
But all politicians told us it was a fabulous thing to be happening.
Well, no, there was no debate. There was no debate at all. Everybody, once they got their piece, that was it. And they signed it, and they brought it to the Parliament, and it was signed without much discussion, as you probably already know. And we are now, reaping the, benefits or
dealing with the whirlwind.
And and I agree with him that if nothing else, they should have at least delayed implementing it or extended the period of implementation.
Phase the
we have still
process.
not faced the full impact of it. We have agreed that in that 18th Amendment that nobody is going to be laid off. So all the employees, all the who have been at the moment, all the ministries that have gone to the provinces, all the employees will have to be found jobs if they cannot be absorbed by the provincial governments. They will have to be paid. All those people. We are already.
Where are we going to get the money from?
Yesterday we were told that the information committee of the Senate that the budget will run out with the information ministry in the second or third quarter of this year. They will not have enough money. And all the ministries are telling us the same story. And this is despite them
So
printing money.
just this is Information Ministry, so state-owned enterprises like Radio Pakistan, Pakistan Television, APP will have to again borrow from banks to meet
They
their payrolls.
already are unable to pay their salaries.
They're already unable to pay.
This is the present position, despite the fact, like you quite rightly pointed out, that we are printing money right, left and center.
4 billion a day.
Everything. Still this is the position.
Sardar Sahab, part of it, yes, I totally buy what you're saying, that yes, the money is being used to deal with the devolution issues and others. But how could this not have been anticipated? I mean, and if it wasn't anticipated, then what should be done now? What are you advising your leadership to do?
You see, there's very little advice that one can give to anybody. And but I think what I can say is that there was a move to expand the tax net, the tax net, and
right.
Somehow or the other, whenever this issue comes up, you know, somehow it gets always diffused. We'd heard from the FBR that there are 3 million people outside the tax net. Now, we only heard once and we never heard again. And this, I've been in politics in this game for the last 35 years or so. Every year this comes up, that expand the tax net. And in the end, nobody, nothing comes out of it. I think that is where we need to go. Instead of increasing the taxes on the consumer and the already hard-pressed taxpayer, we've got to increase the tax net. There are people, millions of people who have luxury homes. You see them around you, Katrina, Lahore, Karachi, Islamabad. What do they pay in taxes? Nothing.
Absolutely.
And so I think
Sir,
the whole
one of the
tax
key
system
issues
has
on this,
to be
of course,
revamped.
is that political will is needed to do these. Now, a suggestion that was presented on this program by, I believe it was Khurram Dastagir, I'm not entirely certain. He said that everybody who has a Nadra card over the age of 18 should be required to file a tax return, whether or not they have to pay taxes or not. Even if they don't have to pay taxes, they should still file a return. That is usually the law in most countries. Why don't we have that law here?
Well, you see, Katrina, taking you back a little, if you permit, in 1985 Assembly, I was member of the National Taxation Reform Commission. One of the things, the key suggestion that we made in that was, there were only 2 MNAs in that very financially very high quality commission, that there should be a wealth census of Pakistan. Now, I think Nadra has done some sort of a census on, every Pakistani must file a wealth statement, not to be taxed, but to be declared. And based on that, whatever evasion there is, whatever, all the various ways people find to take their money out of the country or put it into properties, I think that has to be identified. The tax base has to increase. And we've got to increase our, tax to GDP ratio by a minimum of 1% a year. And 3 to 4 years down the line, we'll have 12%. That will ease the situation. Otherwise, we're going to continue having to do deficit financing and to add to the money supply. There's no other way out.
Well, it's time for us to take a short commercial break. When we return, these are the issues that we need to talk about. Is the government simply distracted from simple issues of governance? When I say simple, restructuring state-owned enterprises is not rocket science. Putting ahead and going ahead and ordering the restructuring of the FBR is not as huge a matter as it's sometimes made out to be. The government has choices, so why isn't it acting on them? We'll talk about this after a short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Witness. Well, as we said before the break, restructuring state organizations is not a massive task. These state organizations are hemorrhaging public money. And the sad part is that a lot of it is simple wastage. And already, as Senator Tariq Azim was telling us, that the Information Ministry alone says that they don't have the money to pay, which means that at least 4 organizations, Senator, I can think of, APP, Radio Pakistan, Pakistan Television, they're already again now going to the banks to meet their payroll. I can't even begin to imagine what the situation is in other organizations like PIA, Pakistan Steel, Pakistan Railways.
We know all of them have to.
They're all in a huge disastrous state. So why do you think the government, you say that they're incapable, you think they're inefficient. A lot of other people have more malignant ideas about this, and they say that it's simple corruption.
Corruption is Auditor General's report. That sort of points out, over 300 billion, 323 to be precise, billion of corruption that they have identified. If you look at the corruption that's going on in other departments, like customs, they point out from one post alone, like Chaman, how much corruption there is. They have identified, which a case is already in the courts, about the Afghan trade, transit trade, how much money that is being wasted. So this is only one side of the equation. Yes, I agree with you and I agree with Sajjad Sahib that if we could increase the tax base, yes, certainly.
Of course.
But just to meet our expansion and the increasing population, that size of population demands that we have higher revenues.
Senator, but I will put it to you as a member of the public as well, that the resentment amongst the people, because they see corruption at the highest ranks in the government as well, or at least they perceive corruption at the highest ranks of the government, and therefore they're reluctant to pay their taxes.
That is true. That will happen. You see, that once who is paying the taxes, the people who are being taxed at the source. Those who have got no other option, who get taxed, first of the month, salaried people.
Like me.
That's right, exactly. And they are the ones, those who should be paying, are they able to, big businessmen, they can go and negotiate with the tax people and not pay money. I mean, that is the tragedy, that we can be collecting not millions but billions of rupees can be collected quite easily if we are just, ourselves are honest, the government ourselves is honest. They can show that they are very clean people themselves, and people, I agree with you, they'll be quite happy to pay. But when they see them, rolling in money, when they see that they themselves owed so much money to the banks, and suddenly they have all become so wealthy people overnight in the last 3-4 years. And I must also add that this is not a corruption that has happened just recently.
No,
it's just the fact that it has
been a political culture.
It's a chronic problem that we already have, but it has just multiplied many of fold. Now, with the government which has promised people, the relief, bring down the prices, bring down the relief to them in terms of law and order and all kind of things, everything has gone haywire. We don't have anything apart from the prices, the law and order situation which we face today, not only in Karachi but other places in Pakistan.
Absolutely.
All other things, have all multiplied their, problem and their miseries. And no wonder.
Are people losing faith in the government?
This is what will happen. I mean, people, life and property, to protect it is the first duty of the government, any government, and this is precisely what they are unable to do. People do not know where the next meal is coming from. I mean, yesterday, somebody, a leading ulama from alim from Karachi, was saying that because people are totally out of job, they don't have any money, you pay anybody 5,000 rupees and they go and kill somebody. I mean, that is somebody.
So crime goes up in Karachi.
Crime goes up because daily wages workers, they can't get their jobs. Every day there is a strike. Every day there's a strike. Karachi is the financial capital of Pakistan. So people are killing each other. And today we hear that all three parties have agreed after hundreds of people have been killed, that they have agreed that law should take its own course.
Yeah, but their agreements frankly don't mean very much to me anymore.
Of course.
Because we've seen them over and again. Sir Sahib, what's distracting the government from doing its job? And let me add to this, that when I hear your former Home Minister from Sindh, Dr. Zulfikar Mirza, telling the current Federal Interior Minister Rehman Malik not to enter Karachi for 15 days, that left me feeling shaken, worried, because now it seems that there are major cracks within the People's Party itself. What's going on within the party?
Katrina, I'm also at a loss at this event. This should not have happened. But I suppose when a government is so big in terms of coalition partners and the lead party does not have a simple majority to form a government, then this is the outcome. I mean, what you are all talking about are symptoms, but the disease lies elsewhere, and the disease lies in the fact that people of Pakistan gave a split mandate. So today you have nobody that you can actually hold accountable or responsible, because when the responsibility comes on finger is pointed at us, we say we only got 126 members in the National Assembly, and we got to go and beg, and we got to go and plead to other smaller coalition partners to keep the coalition going. So these are the systemic issues of the present, dispensation.
So the People's Party leaders are turning
one can
against
only
each
hope
other.
that in the next, well, all I can say is that I hope in the next election, people of Pakistan give a clear mandate to anybody, whoever they like, but it should be a clear mandate, so that then the people can hold that person accountable and the buck should stop on him. Today I don't know where the buck stops. Does it stop with the MQM, the PMLQ,
Absolutely,
or the ANP? So these are some of the systemic issues that Pakistan has to live with and face, and in the face of all these difficulties, democracy has to survive. Because if democracy doesn't survive, then I think there's a very bleak future for Pakistan. At least at the end of a term, a government or the opposition can go to the people, and people have the vote in their hands, and people take a decision who they want. I only hope next time people of
I would
Pakistan
argue to you
take a wiser
that
decision.
democracy will survive. Sorry for interrupting, sir, but I would argue that democracy will survive if democracy delivers, and so far democracy has not delivered much.
No, democracy is not about delivering. Democracy is about responsibility of the rulers, whoever they may be. If they are elected by the people, they are responsible to the people, because mere democracy is not going to solve your issues. There are some issues of foreign policy, some economic structural problems which are going to take years and years to solve. But that does not mean democracy has failed. All that it means is those issues are sometimes intractable. Now, Kashmir issue cannot be solved if you have dictatorship or democracy in Pakistan. Similarly, you have the issue of your circular debt. Now, that's nothing to do with the democracy or dictatorship. It's been inherited, it's been compounded.
It's about governance.
And no, it's nothing about governance. I think the moment that, you start tightening the noose, then suddenly there's a huge furor, huge noise in the media and political parties in the parliament. So everything, anytime you want to do some improvements, some changes, some structural adjustments, there's a huge amount of resistance.
Okay, Sardar Sahab, I'm going to put to you perhaps a very
we
tricky
are hamstrung because we only have.
Sardar Sahab, as I said, a tricky and an unfair question to you. Do you think at the rate that the People's Party government is working, functioning, that it is going to be able to hold the country together in some kind of coherent, sensible way, or are we until the March elections and then call for new elections? What is the People's Party planning? What do you think the People's Party should do at this point?
Well, I think People's Party should not worry about the elections. I think what they need to worry about is to solve some of the outstanding problems. We need to address ourselves in these public corporations. We need to solve the problem of PIA, Pakistan Railways, WAPDA. These are the three major corporations which are hemorrhaging your economy, and we need to address these. And if you can address these and have another couple of thousand megawatts coming in, a gas pipeline coming in, CNG coming in on a commercial basis in next year and a half or so, I think we would have crossed the goalpost for that.
We can cross the thing, but Senator, I am told by some of my, I would say, acquaintances in opposition parties that the whole political scenario is going to change right after Eid. Do you see now mass protests? Do you see that opposition parties will take the streets, or what form do you think it's going to take?
I think it is time for the leadership to really show their mettle. I don't think that it's the democracy that has failed. I think it's the democratic leaders who have failed. I mean, if the leaders failed, it doesn't mean democracy has failed.
Right.
They have unable been to deliver.
Democracy is an ideal.
It is a system, it's a process, you know. In order to run that process, you have to have the ability to run the process. If we don't have the leaders who are capable of doing that, that doesn't mean the democratic system has failed. That is very much in place. If, as Sardar Sahib has said, you know, that if the mandate is not clearly given to by the public, isn't it time for us to go and ask for a fresh mandate? Maybe this is time to go to public, go to the country again and say, look, we are unable to take some very tough decisions.
Why would the People's Party do that when the Senate elections are due in March?
At the moment, because they are unable to take any decisions, because they are too worried for their power. They are only clinging to power. They don't want to upset their coalition partners. They don't want to blame where the blame should lie. And because they don't want to upset...
They ended up as a minority government in January.
So therefore, they don't want to take any decisions which will upset their coalition partners. So what they should do? They should go to the public and say to them, listen, we want a clear mandate. We want a clear-cut, government, so that the government can take some very tough decisions which we need to take. We are unable to do that because of the coalition partners. They don't agree with us. The three parties can't get along with each other. Each other is blaming everybody else. They don't realize by doing so, what they are saying is that we have all failed.
Okay. Now, Senator, you are in a tricky position because you are sitting on the opposition benches in the Senate, even though your party has gone and joined the government. Now, this kind of fracturing we are seeing in all parties. The People's Party recently dismissed former Senator Anwar Baig from the party. They suspended him from the party. People are being suspended in the People's Party left, right and centre. Your party has got its own problems. You've got the like-minded group. The political parties are also unravelling at the seams, all of them. What do you make of that?
Well, this is the differences within political parties, I think, are not too unhealthy thing. You know, there should be a democracy within the parties. If you don't agree with your leadership, you should be able to say so. You should be able to debate issues. And so I don't think that having differences within a party is that bad a thing. I think it is good for democracy. What we find today is that, the government is unable to take any decisions. And those decisions are being taken by one or two individuals, and the others seem to disagree with that. And once you disagree with them, then obviously you are a persona non grata. But that is a problem that we are facing. No, that is not exactly democracy within the parties.
The PMLN has been playing a somewhat strange role, if I can say so. I wish the PMLN gentleman, Khurram Dastagir, was supposed to join us, but he hasn't. I would have put this guest to them. But they seem to dance out into the center of the ring, take a few jabs at the government, and then go straight back into the corner again and take a break. Why do you think the PMLN is playing this kind of shadow boxing game?
I think maybe they are still, to some extent, clinging to the Charter of Democracy that they had signed with Shahid Benazir Bhutto, and they still feel that somehow they can try and make it work. But it is obvious now that it's not going to work, and I think the only way out now is to go to the country, have fresh mandate. If it is a new coalition, at least you have said to the public, listen, we want a clear mandate this time. We want one party to have a clear majority so they can take some tough decision which Pakistan needs to take. And so be it that if they don't give them a clear mandate and again a coalition comes in, at least you will be able to say to the public, look, this is the problem, that we don't have a clear mandate and we have to take everybody along, and therefore some of the decisions that we should be taking, we are not taking at all. But at least they should go. After 3.5 years, I cannot think that if they can give me 3 good decisions that have been made which are in favor of public, but they have promised the people on the manifesto that they came in, like People Party, which is the major lead party, Roti Kapda Makan, what they had promised, what have they given to people? They got nothing. And so therefore, I think this is time for people to recognize, for the People Party to recognize that maybe they need a fresh mandate. If the people still want to elect them, so be it. Everybody should accept it.
We're going to take a short commercial break over here. One of the important points, of course, is that some of the issues that the Pakistan People's Party has always taken and put itself on the credit part of their accomplishments, the National Finance Commission Award, the 18th Amendment, that today one of their veteran leaders is saying, well, didn't get done as well as it should have been, needed more work, needed more planning, was possibly hurried through. Why is the People's Party conducting this, as I said right at the beginning of the program, this sort of reactive policy, brinkmanship, leaving things until the last minute and then scrambling to get things done, are not a sign of a good governance, are not a sign of a government in charge of a ship the ship of state, which I want to really talk about, which is now sailing perilously close to jagged rocks. We'll talk about this after a short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Witness. Unfortunately, one of the things that we're hearing about raising its ugly head repeatedly, and this discussion really came to the forefront after the troubles in Karachi reached their height and the demand went up that the army should be called out to restore law and order in Karachi. And then the murmurings began that perhaps the army needs to be called out to restore law, order and some kind of semblance of functioning state in the entire country. I regret that these kind of statements are being made, as do all Pakistanis, but the fact of the matter is that the question is now being whispered about once again. Is an army intervention on the cards? Sardar Asif, is an army intervention on the cards at this point?
No, Katrina, I don't think so. I think the Chief of Army Staff has been, General Kiani has been very supportive of democracy, and I think we've had one too many army interventions, and they've really, instead of solving anything, they've compounded the problems of the people. And I don't think that the army has any magic wand that if it came in, it'll be able to solve any major problems of this country. Because some of those problems, as I said earlier, are systemic, and they will be solved through an evolutionary process. Other problems which are more immediate, I think the government is addressing itself to solving those problems, and I don't think there's any threat to democracy. I think we need to trim the government, we need to trim the administration. The governance has to improve. There's no two opinions about that. We have to address ourselves to
that your government, your party is now running out of time on this.
No, I think people are working. I definitely know that people are working very hard to solve some of these problems. And it's, the senator, good senator, I respect him a great deal. He keeps talking about another election, that we should call a snap election. Well, I have no problem with that. I also hope that good senator will go and contest a general seat and be in the National Assembly a colleague of ours instead of sitting in the Senate, which represents nobody really. So I think the political opinions are there, and we welcome them, but I think we should complete the term. The government is doing its best. I think by the end of this term, hopefully there will be another 2,500 megawatts of electricity coming into the system. Hopefully in 2013, LNG imports will be also initiated.
So because I'm short on time, I will ask you the critical question which I talked about at the beginning of the program. What is the point of providing electricity if the prices are going to go so high that it won't be affordable? I mean, even I am now whinging and whining and cringing every time I get my electricity bill, and I'm not a massive user.
Well, you see, I'm an economist as well. I've handled the Planning Commission and in Economic Ministry earlier on. But you see, the fact is, the prices do go up. Now, the problem is that there's a lag. There's always a time lag. Economics is a business of time lags. There's a time lag between the time the incomes rise and the wages and the salaries rise to catch up with the cost of living and cost of utilities and other. So this is a gap, and gaps are always short term, and if you're doing the market economy correctly, then the gaps always fill up eventually. So these,
unfortunately, they aren't filling up as fast as they should. Senator,
your income will rise one day, and you will be able to pay your bills.
Sardar, you were saying?
I said, Katrina, don't worry, your income will rise to a level where you'll be able to pay your bills, but there's a time lag.
From your lips to my boss's ears. But Senator, the other issue, of course, is that any plans by the opposition to ambush the government? Because I agree with Sardar Asif, I don't see a military intervention. Because at this point I don't see why the military would even want to get itself stuck in the kind of mess that Pakistan is in right now. But do you think that any opposition plan to ambush the opposition after Eid, which is what we are hearing about, what form could it take?
Well, opposition have got a role to play in any democratic system. It is their job to keep the government of the day on their toes, to do the right thing, and if they're not doing anything, to criticize them inside the parliament and outside the parliament. And I think opposition should keep on doing that. I mean, that's the only way to keep a check and balance on that
but
government.
It's not working. I mean,
it's not working because, you know, this, like you said quite rightly, some of the opposition have been playing, you know, to a friendlier role, you know, it's a softly approach, which has not worked. I see Sardar Sahib saying that, you know, the government is doing its best, but I'm afraid the best is not good enough. I mean, if this is their best, you know, I don't know what else they can do. But things are that the
What are the options for the opposition right now?
Opposition, I think, you know, they should now, some sort of a mass movement of the people should come out, and they should come out and, you know, protest in the proper way. That they should just simply, if they cannot afford, you know, they cannot pay, if they cannot pay the taxes, they just should simply say, can't pay, won't pay. I mean, simple as that. I mean, we just simply cannot afford to pay. A person does not know where the next meal is coming from. He does not know where to take his mother if she goes ill. He does not know how to pay the fees of his children. What is he supposed to do? I mean, this is the problem. And the government thinks, you know, everything is hunky-dory, and because they've passed 18th Amendment, you know, or they've done an NFC bill, I'm sorry, the 18th Amendment does not fill the tummy of the children. It does not bring medicine to the mother, ailing mother. One has to realize, if you ask the government, if you ask any minister, what have you done, they will again count the same thing, 18th Amendment, 19th Amendment, NFC bill. Well, what does the public get, a proverbial man on the street, because he wants to know?
They don't care anymore.
Absolutely.
That's the issue. That's really the problem. But it also seems that the opposition's choices are very limited. They don't have much that they can do.
Well, I suppose they cannot afford to sit back now at this time.
Is the PMLN simply not acting because they're protecting their interests in the Punjab?
I think partly that may be true, but I think if the Punjab will go the same way the rest of Pakistan, like Karachi, if people think this is an isolated issue and we can see it in isolation, that is not correct. It is a national issue, like Karachi will affect all of Pakistan. So Punjab cannot stay isolated.
Stay away from that.
Affect, of course.
Okay, well, we're out of time, so I'll have to leave it there. I'd like to thank my guests, Senator Tariq Azim, as well as Sardar Asif Ahmed Ali, who joined us from Lahore. And thank you both for your time in today's program. Today's program was, ladies and gentlemen, not meant to frighten you or scare you, but the problem is that people are frightened and they are scared. But there are choices, there are issues, but each and every one of them has a solution. And the solutions have been presented by the opposition parties over and over again. Now, of course, gossip in Islamabad is as strong an industry as it could be in any world capital. And gossip has it that the opposition is going to be planning some kind of major ambush of the government after Eid. It's probably going to happen within Parliament. We have to see what they have up their sleeves. We're sorry that Khurram Dastgir from the PMLN wasn't able to join us today. We will bring you the perspective of the PMLN after Eid as that of other parties like the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and others. We have to see what's going to be cooking. Thank you so much for having joined us tonight. Katrina Hussain saying Khuda Hafiz from Islamabad.